Alright guys, welcome back to another discussion. Today we're going to be talking about a statement that was put out by DragonBaeZ on Twitter. Leave a link to her Twitter profile in the video description. Highly advise that you guys follow, show some support. And I asked her for permission. She said it was okay. I can definitely talk about this. She put out a statement in regards to feminism and how women, especially on social media and media in general, tend to try to speak on behalf of other women that, ironically enough, don't even share the same viewpoints as them. The main point of this video is to have a solid and rational discussion about the emotions that women like this tend to have and how it affects them during that point in time and how it affects them going forward into the future, because I think we'll be able to dissect this and hopefully DragonBaeZ, if you're watching, thank you, I really appreciate it. And even though this woman here, which is spicy meatball, even though this woman here is just one person coming forward, right? Kickvic coming forward. You know, she's just one individual coming forward. I think that we can look at her statement, talk about it, dissect it, analyze it, and then come to a general assessment as to the viewpoint a lot of these people have on social media. Especially people that tend to be overly sensitive and fragile to the point where they hold on to grudges, and instead of improving their life, instead of taking a negative or any kind of experience that they have experienced, they hold on to it and they use this as a means. It fuels them. It actually angers them, and they use this as a means to obtain some kind of platform or position, only to wind up finding out that they're never really at peace with themselves. They're never at a position in time or at a point where they can start to relax, where they can kick back and feel like they're a part of the society that they spent so much time trying to trash. Because at the end of the day, why would you want to be a part of something that you spent X amount of time shitting on? Which is why I feel like conversations like these are worth having. So once again, I'm going to read a DragonBaeZ statement over here. And before we dive into this, let's just nip this one little thing in the bud real quick. MS, you're just trying to smash. I mean, okay, let's look at her, okay? I'm not trying to do anything. One of the things that we can do for women or for people in general is to give them at least a general sense of respect. Is for me to be completely honest and upfront with the idea of me saying, well, if I had the opportunity to, 100% I would more than likely do that, right? But I'm not trying to do that now. Having this conversation, the efforts that I'm making here are not in an effort for me to gain some kind of physical, this isn't a physical transaction. So once again, thank you, DragonBaeZ. Appreciate the statement. Let's jump into it. All right, so her statement goes as follows. To quote-unquote feminists that have been speaking on behalf of all women, the act of a feminist is to get equality for women. I will tell you my story. I am a woman in the tech support world, which has indeed had a few bumps of sexism happen. I went to college and have a few degrees to do something that I am passionate about. During the beginning, even though I had degrees and my coworkers were not as certified, I do remember talking to clients saying, oh, I will wait for him to help me, quote unquote. I even had to deal with, oh, people just like her because she is pretty and has big boobs, end quote. Within months, within my knowledge and hard work, I became not only lead of the group, but top 3, if not number 1 in client satisfaction, speed of completion, accuracy in identifying a problem, and accurately solving problems nationwide. I fought to have the hours and the pay I deserved, and in the process, I didn't have to bring any of my male counterparts down. In fact, I helped them succeed as well. And this is what feminism is, equality. Not complaining that Goku is voiced by a male, which is ridiculous because Goku is a male. It's not, quote unquote, oh, this company is ran by a man, let's destroy it. This has to stop. We need to rise up and bring everyone, including men, up and to better human beings. Sincerely, DragonBaeZ. P.S. That nickname was given to me by multiple females in the Dragon Ball community. So, with this statement in mind, how can we use the words of one individual to generalize on a large group of people? How can we use a statement by an individual to generalize and assess the potential emotional standpoint of people on #kickvic and of people out there in general? And to do that, I think it's important for me to note that just because I'm covering her piece, that just because I follow her on Twitter, that just because I interact with her every now and then, it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to agree or disagree with her every single step of the way, every single time. I'm more than welcome to sharing my viewpoint, and even though my viewpoint, and even if my viewpoint kind of doesn't necessarily coincide with hers, the main goal here is to have a rational discussion about this. And it's to get people to understand that they are capable of looking in more than one direction at a time. So she goes on to mention that she went to college. She has a few degrees to do something that she's passionate about. Great. Congratulations. She's educated. Good. But then after that, things get a little interesting because she mentions a certain scenario, which I'm assuming has happened in multiple times. It's happened to multiple people multiple times. She says, during the beginning, even though I had degrees and my coworkers were not as certified, I do remember talking to clients saying, oh, I will wait for him to help me. Now, there's two ways that this can happen. One, it could be the case that maybe they just didn't feel comfortable with her helping her. And that's the narrative that she's putting forward in her piece here. But it's also important to acknowledge that there could also be another possibility. It's not to say that I haven't gone through this. I have had this happen to me, right? As a male, my body language, the way I speak, I try to make sure that everything I say has value. There's worth behind everything that I say, that there's worth behind everything that I try to explain, and that you obtain some kind of value by listening to me speak. Body language, maybe my appearance, whatever it is, there is something about a male presence that has the ability, especially in the work environment, depending on the field especially, to persuade people to take them seriously. And it's not to say that you can't take women seriously either, because, for example, once again, we can take a look at her, and she's very attractive. Like, she's no joke, right? And I imagine she looks great without makeup as well. So this alleged woman here, it's highly possible that she probably wasn't taken seriously, that she was probably shoved to the side, and the person or this alleged client or clients, because I'm assuming it's happened to her and other women as well, dozens of times, it's highly likely that she could have just been tossed to the wayside, but it's also likely that clients or certain customers already know who they want to speak to. And despite me giving you those two scenarios, the main point here, and what's important to note here, is the fact that this woman, she comes out with this statement. It's a great statement. She formulates this point in a negative way. And what I mean by that, it's not to make you feel negative. She's trying to portray how she felt during these times. Whenever things like this would happen, she felt that she was being, low tier, that she was being pushed down, that she wasn't being taken seriously, that her education, despite how hard she worked, despite her having degrees, and despite her on paper being more qualified than her own peers, for example, regardless of the situation, that she felt that she just couldn't match up to what a man who wasn't as qualified as her could do or is, as far as status and position in the workplace primarily. And I'm willing to bet that DragonBaeZ is also willing to, understand and willing to acknowledge that the other scenario that I mentioned is also highly possible. But it doesn't dismiss the fact that she was still willing to pursue an education, and she was driven to pursue a high place, a high position of power in her profession. Because it's people like this that don't take those negative experiences, like people on hashtag kickvic, for example, and like a lot of people like that. It's not just women. It's a lot of men who have very feminine characteristics. And I'm not saying feminine as a means to, deteriorate or degrade someone who is feminine, or an actual woman, for example, or a girl, or someone who's emotional, but it's to portray this overly sensitive and overly fragile standpoint and mindset that people have, that instead of going through a potential small or big negative experience and moving forward with it the same way DragonBaeZ has claimed that she has in her statement, they actually hold on to it. They hold a grudge against people or a gender, right? A group of people. It fuels them. And that's what motivates and drives them. It's not the idea of being successful. It's not the idea of taking that negative experience, learning from it, and making the best out of it. They don't do that. In fact, what they do is it fuels they get angry, and they start to develop this hatred, and that hatred fuels them into obtaining a position of power to where they can treat people like that, only to end up not really being at peace at all with themselves, only to end up, despite having whatever position that they have claimed on social media, in the workplace, in society, whatever it is, in the home, it doesn't matter, in school, it doesn't matter what it is. Ironically enough, they end up never being at peace with themselves. They never end up being able to sit back and relax and feel like they can release that hatred and that anger and better themselves, because they spent a large portion of their time and their life shitting on everything that they've ultimately should have been trying to be a part of and to be a positive part of. So what they do is they rally people who have also been victimized. They rally people who have also been affected by any kind of negative experience. They amplify that experience. They understand how people like that feel, that they want to feel like they're a part of something. They want to feel like they have some kind of position of power to where they can flex and manipulate things. You have people coming, making claims, and even lying about stuff, even lying about things, right? For things, they claim to have acknowledged these things have been going on for over 15 years. Then they start tying in homophobia and anti-Semitic behavior to acts of sexual assault and rape. These things don't correlate. And while, yes, I do agree that VIC Mignogna is very capable of being a bad person, yes, I do think it's possible. But the main point here is that you don't get to hold on a grudge from 10 years ago, feel comfortable back then, feel completely content with it, but then 15 years after having a liberal education of some kind, listening to your college professor, watching too many AOC videos and things like that, that you end up looking back at yourself 15 years ago and thinking, yeah, I do recall feeling kind of uncomfortable there. Yeah, let's get him. She says, I even had to deal with, people just like her because she is pretty and has big boobs. Now, first and foremost, let me just say that, judging by this picture, I wouldn't think that she had big boobs. There's no way for me to tell. But thanks for telling me. I admit it, I would like her. Any guy, any person, any normal person would look at her and like her for being pretty. Any person would look at her and like her for having big boobs. I like her if she's pretty. I like her if she has big boobs. I like her if she's pretty and has big boobs. You get the point here. She's a girl. I'm gonna like her, right? She's someone who has the potential of being liked and appreciated and ultimately, over time, respected. Now, here's the thing, right? I mean, we can look at her again. Like, she's very attractive. It's a given, okay? And I'm willing to bet that she looks fine without makeup on as well. But the main point is that it kind of brings us to the topic of a general respect. And I would have to at least acknowledge and give her the due respect of acknowledging that she is attractive, of acknowledging that she is pretty, of acknowledging that she, has physical assets and features that instinctively and biologically make me, drool, right? This is normal behavior. But her point, and women like this, they tend to have this idea where they say, okay, but there's a time and place for everything. And I'm sorry that you feel that way, but as a man, I can't necessarily apologize for forgetting about reality and acknowledging just how physically attractive that you are. Even the point I just made doesn't really have anything to do with the workplace per se. It just goes to show you the level of impact that women have that they aren't even aware of, for example. Now, as far as what warrants actual respect outside of her physical assets and her features, despite acknowledging the fact that she has obviously taken the time to make herself physically presentable, right? And as such, I have given her the respect, the due diligence, and the acknowledgement of respecting her to the sense where I would say, wow, you get the point. So it brings us to the next topic of what warrants actual respect in regards to the respect that women like this tend to look for. Because this correlates to a point that I brought up previously, where I was talking about women and people who are overly sensitive and fragile. They go through things throughout the course of their time, throughout the course of their life. They go through positive and negatives, right? But instead of holding on to that and creating a grudge and then becoming a tyrant and a monster and a bitch later on, they take it, they use it, and they better themselves and they make the best out of it. She mentions here she continued to pursue a career. She became someone who was very prominent in her field, and that's someone I can respect because she put in the time and the effort to compete with people who statistically have been proven, men statistically have been proven to want to pursue a career much more than women. And it's not to put women down. It's a fact. Women are more likely to quit jobs or to consider not working because they'd much rather be home with their family. They find happiness being at home with kids and having a family to take care of and nurture. That's a big responsibility that I feel that women don't necessarily acknowledge simply because it doesn't get them points out there in society. But I would imagine that someone like DragonBaeZ, who has acknowledged that she has gone through her fair share of small or big acts of sexism to some extent, she has still persevered, taken all that stuff, and she has become the person that she feels she can be and that she should be. She mentions that she's worked for her pay, she's worked for her hours, and that she's competed up there, and that she's considered someone to be highly respected at that point. And I guess the moral of the story is I don't really have to respect you just because you exist. And that also applies to me. You don't have to respect me for existing. There are certain advantages and disadvantages that women have over men and vice versa. As far as work is concerned, it really depends on the field of work that you're into. For example, registered nurses, that's a field that is dominated by women. And a man who is considered to be an RN is actually ridiculed to some extent, despite how much they make, despite how much hours they're putting in, despite the fact that even male RNs to some extent have a higher probability of making more money over time, over the course of their career, simply because they work longer, they're willing to work longer hours, right? They won't quit because they don't have to worry about getting pregnant and things like that, things that women have to deal with, which isn't a bad thing, and none of that is wrong, and I can't stress that enough. We have women who are highly susceptible to becoming emotional, but a woman like this has experienced her fair share of emotional tragedies, but has chose to persevere and to compete with her male counterparts instead of bringing them down via reputation destruction, via sleeping with them, via making certain advances, offering, making physical transactions of some kind. These are things that I can say where she has warranted and earned my respect at that point. And not just general respect, because now at the end of this conversation, we come to figure out that she's pretty. She has big boobs. Thanks for telling me again. And she's successful, and she has the drive that rivals a lot of men out there. And that is something to be reckoned with. I think that's a force to be reckoned with, and that's someone worthy of respect. Now, I don't know her. I don't know her mindset. I've never had a solid conversation with her. I don't know her physically either. So obviously, she would have to earn those forms of respect from me as well, the same way I would have to earn that kind of respect from her as well. But you can see why human interaction and why it's important for us to be able to interact with one another without the fear of being brought down or being accused of something 10 or 15 years later. And with that, I'm going to say once again, thank you so much, DragonBaeZ, for the statement. Kudos to you. Guys, leave your thoughts in the comment section. If you guys like videos like this, if you guys like conversations like this, let me know, and I will do more things like this. Like I said, hopefully I would love to have you guys featured on the channel. Maybe hop on a Google Hangouts talk or like a Discord server or something like that, and we can talk about stuff like this. I think I do much better when I'm in like a panelist kind of setting, like a podcast kind of setting, instead of me just talking into my microphone and webcam by myself. But I feel like I do better, and I present myself better, and I perform better when I have other people that I feel are worthy of having an intellectual conversation with. So with that, thank you so much for listening, guys. Have a good night and take care.